Well, hello everybody. I'm here in Ontario, Greater Ontario region of Hamilton, and we're going to have a great interview today. A lot of people asking me about residential schools, the history of it, specifically the 215. I've been through this entire history. I can tell you all right now. It starts the Church of England. Became the Anglican Church right here in Canada. 5% of the population of Canada subscribes to the Anglican Church. Otherwise, the church I grew up in, Catholicism, Catholic Church, Roman Catholic, all our popes involved through that history absolutely perpetuated residential schools, pushed it, pressed it. Wasn't just England, even though England had full control over Canada from the inception, pushed that narrative. They did this all over the world, not just with the First Peoples of Canada. It's been done in every colonial region. UK entered in that time frame. However, to really get to the bread and butter, everybody, Queen Elizabeth, in her entire reign, her entire ascension, has zero, I repeat, verifiable, factual, can be backed up, has zero to do with any education of children whatsoever. In fact, in all that history of her reign, she's 95 years old, she is not sponsored by any civil society, non-profit, foundation, or religion on education in her entire reign. What happened post-1952 Ascension and onward is on all of you Canadians. That's right, on all of you. Now I'm going to get into an interview here in just 1 minute, but there are facts that people have to understand. Queen Elizabeth, again, you can look at every registered foundation, charity, non-profit, and absolute civil society that many of you think are government institutions. Not one of them belongs to education. Not even close. What the Church of England, the Anglicans did, what the Catholics did, was done on their own through absolutely from 1952 onward in living reality. For Anglicans, it went up to 1969. For Catholics, all the way to 1977. I grew up Catholic in a small town region. I went to a Catholic school. We had nuns teaching us. I spent grade 6 in a church basement in my hometown, right in the church. I never experienced any travesties. That's just me. I was even an altar boy. But I know these travesties happen, and I'm going to just open with this. Did it resume? Looks like Facebook's not happy with the song I used. It's everybody saying, but it's hard because you'd have to scroll. I think I'm going to have to start over. I don't know what was blocked there. Facebook's angry. The owners of the music's angry. But you know what? United Kingdom, I'm sorry I had to use that song. There's a lot of truth in there. Goes throughout the world, and it's through colonialism. Iron Maiden, I'm sorry I did take your song today to prove a point. Facebook, you decide what you're going to want to do, but you're going to hear absolute truth as it really is. And sometimes we have to step on toes of those most wealthiest. As you see so many people out there going with the elite. And I can tell you, I'm going to have to backtrack now. I hate redoing a live, but it looks like I have to. I have no choice. It was my choice to put it in. Facebook's on me about the music, but I don't care. The message is more important than what they're going to do. And I actually do want Warner to come after me because I do want to meet Facebook's smartest, brightest persons in charge. There's a whole bunch of them I want. But we're going to backtrack. I don't know what's been lost here. And Tina, how does the video look right now? Is it still good? Okay, going. I'm going to backtrack, everybody. In the title, I don't know how much you heard or you didn't hear, but we're going to start again. So, the Catholic Church, Anglicans, Church of England. It starts with the Church of England. That's where residential schools start. Colonial system perpetuated right across the world. 5% of Canadians today belong to the Anglican Church. 5%, which subscribed to that system, that colonial system. In the United States of America, another highlight point, non-existent. Since the inception of American independence, Church of England, Anglican, literally non-existent. 5,200 members out of 325 million Americans. Don't subscribe to it, don't want it. Forbidden from the United States of America. Ruled illegal, we'll get into that. Canada, not so much. We have over 352,000 members in Canada, as well as the Catholic Church history. I'm a Roman Catholic, raised Catholic. I can tell you all this right now. Since Elizabeth's ascension, 1952, she has not had in any way, shape, or form as the Queen of England anything to do with education in Canada. Zero. You won't find a civil society registered or supporting her in education. Nothing to do with her. She has many. You can look it up. You won't find education. Absolutely. Since her ascension, it's all on Canada's politicians. Nothing, I repeat, nothing to do with the UK. Prior to that event, prior to 1952, before that, 1945, the Charter of the UN, when the Allies victorious said, end of colonialism, UK had to give it up. That was the mandate to King George VI. He went through World War II. He went all the way through decolonization. Canada's one of the countries. Canadian politicians chose to continue with residential schools. On the Church of England Anglican side, that went to 1969. Way past any time frame this world should even recognize. The Catholic Church, 1977. Way past anything the world should recognize as justifiable. A highlight too as well, 1948 Declaration of Human Rights. Residential schools made illegal. That kind of activity, that kind of infringement on the family, ruled illegal post-World War II, worldwide. Russia never signed it. They never bound it in absolute law. It's bound worldwide. Russia didn't say no, they abstained. However, it doesn't become absolutely binding, as Russia could pull out any time they wish. To make that law that would have ended all residential schools, Russia would have had to sign on. Again, everybody, anything you're hearing about Queen Elizabeth II and residential schools, fictitious, fake, fraud, to take away the narrative of absolute perverts of Canada. Not elites, not that there aren't sick, disgusting, perverted elites, but I can tell you firsthand, when you go across reserves, you will find that children have to walk to school. They don't have the luxury of a bus. How could a system with an invisible fence around it afford a system like that? That's for the rest of Canada, not for the First Peoples. They don't have any kind of financing that could ever afford that. Children walk to school at vast distances. Any pervert can pull into a reserve and grab a child just like that, or a woman walking just like that. And if you think it's rich elites, the numbers don't support that. Sexual assaults in Canada, it's in everybody's family. There is someone somewhere who's perpetrated that kind of crime. And guess what? The most vulnerable people in Canada are the First Nations, the First Peoples, especially the Reserve Indians that we're going to get into. So without further ado, regardless of what people want to believe, narratives they want to run with, how they want to go, reality is this. That's just how it is. It's everyday Canadian citizens. It was everyday Canadian politicians from 1952 all the way to 1977 that perpetuated this heinous crime against the peoples, a furthering genocide done by none other than our Canadian politicians who took that crown for themselves. That's truth. That's reality. Now I'm going to bring forward Tina Marovich, a direct descendant of a residential school survivor. Her mother, 1977. Come on in, Tina.
Hello, Hi,
Tina. Would you like to tell everybody who you are, where you're from, what lands you're from, and your history?
Sure, my name is Tina Marovich. My maiden name, Tina Crow. My mother gave me that name. She never married my father, who was French-Ukrainian. So I walk in both worlds. Never really fit in either. Canada has always labeled us so many different things, but I know who I am, and I'm going to tell you, I am from the Nakwe people, and we are people who followed the river. My mother attended the residential schools when she was young. However, she wasn't taken until she was 9 years old, so she had her culture and her language, her ways already built into her by that time. So I myself know my culture, my ways. That was not ever taken from me. However, I don't have my language. My father's side, I wasn't taught any of the culture, so I didn't take anything from it.
Just keep going, everybody. I'm gonna make sure
problem.
the Facebook's good.
Being a direct descendant, I guess we could talk about that a little bit. We got the brunt. We got the brunt of it. So I grew up with a chip on my shoulder. I was angry, but I really didn't understand why until I got to become a young adult. When I became a young adult, I learned that I was angry with my mother. I was like, she knew the language, how come she didn't teach me? So I was perturbed and I was really angry with her. And then I too had to learn about the residential schools. And I realized that my mother put me in a world where she thought that she was going to protect me. And one of the ways that she protected me was to keep me from my language. Because she was with a white man. I went and attended public school, so I myself was never a part of the residential schools. However, the public schools weren't very nice to us either. I guess that's all I can think about it.
So you're Treaty 4 out of Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Just so, because a lot of people don't know, right?
My people
People will know, but Canadians watching aren't going to know. Treaty 4 is a region that overlaps Alberta right across southern Saskatchewan into Manitoba.
Yes. So in actuality of Treaty 4, my people knew how large they were and how much land we actually covered. I think that would be an eye-opener for them because we cover 3 provinces. We're part of 3
and it's
provinces.
funny, just for Treaty Indians, and it's okay I say that, right?
Yeah.
So for Treaty Indians, Canadians, I know out east you don't understand this, but and Tina's been out east here a long time, But for those treaty Indians, what had happened, which is not like the United States, not even close to the United States, the American Indian, which is the same Indian peoples, when you look at the actual map of all the Indian people through USA and Canada, it's all one peoples. They have overlapping, considerable map overlaps of the same people, same groups of people. We see this Treaty 7, especially Treaty 4. There's more out west, but on the Canadian side, those people, what's called unceded territory, is because they were eradicated from that area. They all, like the song we just listened to, Run to the Hills. Well, they ran to Alberta, into Saskatchewan, into parts, most of Manitoba. All the Indian peoples of the time in Canada, up in that northern half, all ran into the center. They were eradicated out of the Atlantic, upper and lower Canada, most of it, interbred with the French. It wasn't completely different than the British, how barbaric it was. In fact, when you look at Six Nations, they actually fought with the British against the Americans in the War of Independence and the American-Canadian War. And out west, different story. So the American Indians flourished in Washington. They made treaties. However, the British, independent America, dealt with them. However, their counterpart nations were eradicated out of BC. So they either run to Alberta, run through to Saskatchewan, or onwards, the treaty lands. And when you look at Canada, you'll see clearly almost all First Nations people eradicated and chased out of the exterior coastlines, all unceded land. Treaties are all in the middle, and it's nothing like America. They have way less, no settlements whatsoever. The perpetuation of residential schools that did happen to a degree in the States much earlier, but Canada took that on in its own way. That was imposed by the United Kingdom with their crown power of lieutenant governors of all provinces and territories, and absolutely Governor General through Her Majesty of the time, Queen Victoria. That ended with King George VI, mandated by World War II. People don't know the story of how Canada continued on way past any civil rights era of the USA. This wasn't occurring in the USA in the same time periods. I urge everybody to look up Richard Nixon and what happened with the American Indian, which is already over 5 decades old, everybody. And nothing in Canada has been settled. 4/5 of the land, atrocities still committed every day, every hour. Right now, as we sit here, there's atrocities being committed,
And being unfolded before our eyes. We always knew that these graves existed at every residential school. Of course, nobody's going to believe us until they find the hard facts.
Yeah.
And that's what they ran into just the other day.
So many missing, but everybody wants to try and make it like it's some kind of super elite. Tina, everything you've looked at since we've got together in this monumental quest for Canada, what have you seen physically in documentation? What have you seen? Why is 1952 so moving for you?
Well, the first thing is, Dave is right. The Queen has never been a part of our society, and I know that's hard to understand or wrap your head around when Canada constantly uses her name and her crown, which in turn they took out her name, and now we hear the crown all over in our courts and our when they pledge allegiance to the crown in our government system. But one of the things I learned was that. Sorry,
it's okay. No, it's just things you've seen, I
One
guess.
of the things, one of the things I learned is that we don't have the British Governor General. We do have a Governor General, but that Governor General is appointed by our Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister holds both powers, the power of Canada and the power of the Crown. And what is the Crown? It's now broken in. We hear things like provincial Crown lands, and we hear federal Crown lands. So they've divided it not only in that power, and they've taken that power and our lands, and now they're starting to sell it, as we can see in our newspapers today. You will find Crown land being sold, and especially at a provincial level. Yeah. And why is that, Dave?
Because the lieutenant governors, the Prime Minister appoints those two. Since 1952, lieutenant governors are appointed by each and every elected Prime Minister. Lieutenant governors override every premier or work with the premier. We just watched Legault, Premier Legault in Quebec, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau grant nation status to Quebec. Unilateral constitutional amendment. How is that? Governor General and Lieutenant Governor, which is a crown colonial power, ruled illegal in this world today, everybody. It's ruled illegal. The Binding Five had no idea Canada, they had never looked at the definitions that way. They're learning right now, everybody. But this is how they rob First Nations and all Canadians. And, you know, what we're getting into here, me and Tina, as we go across the east here, I've been to the Six Nations, totally different system than the West. Even BC, totally different system than the treaty lands of Alberta, northern BC, but Alberta, Saskatchewan, all the territories, much different. But when you hit Ontario and postage stamp Manitoba, you start to see the differences. An older system from the UK that those First Peoples, the Indians of Canada, are gravitating to, and they're applying that, but they don't really understand that the Crown is gone, just like all of you Canadians. Nobody knows that 1942 absolutely abolished. It was abolished in 1945. That was the war of colonialism. Before that, we had the League of Nations. That's how residential schools came to be. You replace people. It's bragged about in history. You just told me today about a saint. It was Grandin. Vigil Grandin.
Yes.
And he was a priest with the Catholic Church.
It was 1876, I believe. But he actually, there's a quote from him that I want to share, and it's called "The Goal of Residential School."
He wrote this, everybody. Catholic. Ready?
We instill in them a pronounced distaste for the native life so that they will be humiliated when reminded of their origins. When they graduate from our institutions, the children have lost everything native except their blood. Bishop Vital Grandin, written in 1875. So we've always known what their objective. I'm here today in 2021 to say you have never reached that goal, and
it's true,
and you never will.
And it's true, and
us
you know what?
Indians are here to stay until we settle.
Yeah.
Until we settle.
And that, Canada, should be everyone's goal here. It was done in the United States of America, not totally settled, but a hell of a lot better than what Canada is today. It's gross. It's gross what treaty Indians, we're talking Indian. We're not talking Métis, We're not talking about how many mixed bloods down the line. We're talking about those who actually have and are status Indian, whether unceded or ceded, treaty, not treaty, because they're unceded. If we can settle this, Canadians, it's 4/5 of Canada available to everybody. We have 1/5 now, and of that 1/5, 38 million people hold half of that.
Here in Ontario, there's 79% of this land, or I think it's 74 or 79% of this land here in Ontario that isn't being used. So when you think about how Justin and whatever government that has been in place since 1952, when you think about how they took that crown power and how they have all 78% of this land, we have like maybe 0.2% that Canada gives us the money and, you know, directs it to our communities. But on that crown land, because they have taken that crown and now they have that power over that land, they are now selling it and leasing it to foreign countries which don't have any human rights, the same as us here in Canada, which is true. And
greed and power.
How are we gonna? They're filling up their pockets, doing whatever they want to do with 79% of Ontario's crown land.
It's all of Canada.
And well, absolutely, but at a much smaller scale. I just want to try to put that into perspective, how much they benefit by having that crown power. Yeah. And we continue to play the games and run around like little mice in mazes when we try to find our ways through the court systems. But if you notice, the crown comes up. Every lawyer in Canada isn't going to talk about this. I've already challenged some. None of them will talk about this. Murray Sinclair won't talk about it because it has to do with him pledging allegiance to that crown. He can't step out because that's his rule. That's what he pledged allegiance to. I'm sorry to say that to you today because it's very disappointing. I know how disappointing it was for me because these are our leaders. Another one I want to point out is the reserve system. We all talk about band customs and creating our own laws for our reserves. Well, let me tell you what I found out just battling with my own reserve, because I'm an off-reserve person and lived off the reserve. I'm considered off the reserve, and well, those are on the reserves, right? But the truth is that we all are from the same reserve, but that's how that Canadian system is designed to consistently divide us, cut and divide everywhere, even everywhere you look. On, off reserve, now we have urban. That's
what would you like to say about the reserve system you grew up in, what you've learned now, and how that crown is transferred to the reserves?
When I was looking into my elections, I haven't been able to vote on my reserve because I'm away from the polls, so I live so far away. However, there are many of us that live in the States. I have children of my own that live out there, and it's a fact that we don't get to vote because we don't get a mail-in ballot. So I've been trying to vote and get involved in my reserve, and what I found there during elections was our Band Custom Act. I had to research everything to figure this out, but that colonial system, the skeleton, if you saw and you research it, and how our band custom acts or laws are created, you will find that skeletal from that colonial system. which tells me that our reserves are also ruled by kings and queens, something that was outruled in 1952. Another way to take us away from who we are. And that's a fact.
That's great, Tina. I think everybody, this was a great video. It's real, it's hardcore, it's the truth. People are always looking for the big boogeymans. The reality is, everybody, and this is for Canadians and all First Peoples, the reality is this country can be settled in one federal election. We can go band by band, area by area, reserve by reserve, town hall by town hall, community by community, with the best experts in the world. And First Peoples, we are going to go through the lawyers. Oops, didn't turn the notifications off. Everybody, we are going to spend 1 year for First Nations going through every single First Nations expert, Canadian Indian. We're going through it all to find the best of the best, 1 whole year. I've been all out on the world doing this for Canada and Canadians, but I know it's for nothing if we don't get the First Peoples on board. And we are going to go through, whether it's treaty, non-treaty, unceded, ceded, Métis, absolutely Inuit, and on and on. Each and every community individually, just like every Canadian community individually, through the cities and absolutely through the rural. Doesn't matter where anyone is. We have a price tag on this, $140 million. But you will get absolute constitutionalism as you need it. We will settle the claims. We will give full sovereignty, which is what every human being in this world needs, and absolutely settle all the claims. Whatever it takes, that's reality. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for having me, Tina. Thanks for your words, because it's hard for me, everybody. I needed someone, First Nations, to speak out.
Get you Migwick.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.